Let's go over the 90-90 Copenhagen plank exercise. Really good strategy to strengthen the internally rotating fibers of the adductors. So when going through this, we want to maintain about a 90-degree hip flexion angle from the torso and femur. So when I'm going into the Copenhagen plank, typically we'll see hips extended forward with bent knee or straight knee variations. Now, I'm going to have my torso directly in line with the edge of the bench. I'm going to have my hips flexed to around 90 degrees. If you don't currently have 90 degrees of hip flexion, maybe you're a bit more limited, you could start a little bit outside of that, maybe around 75 degrees. So from here, I'm going to lift the hips. And now, a common compensation we'll see here is this shoulder will rotate excessively over to stay balanced. And now this is really offloading this adductor, okay? So what we want to do is properly stack the shoulders. So now another compensation is we'll squeeze this other leg against the bench. This will offload this top adductor as well. This other arm, I'm just reaching to facilitate this rib cage moving backwards. I'm not reaching while rotating, okay? So now, in this position, what we can do, we can hold statically. We want to make sure we're getting the hips as high from the floor as possible. Now, when I get my hips high, another compensation is we will just rotate to create space from the floor and the hip, okay? So if I say hips high, commonly I'll see this. So we want to get the hips high, but we should really feel a strong oblique contraction when doing that and not rotation from the shoulder. So now that's going to fatigue the adductors much more. So some other ways to progress this, to make this a bit harder, we can now shift the bottom leg under a little bit more so it's in front of the working side knee, and this is going to bias more internal rotation at that pelvis. So I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm in position. Now I'm going to shift this bottom knee forward, okay? And we're gonna feel that adductor now working much harder in its shortened range, okay? So I'm almost trying to pull this knee back as this knee goes forward. And that's a much more strenuous position. Okay, so now I'm biasing more of that internal rotation of the hip. And I'm trying to turn this belly button actively toward this knee, okay? Another way to progress this position is to move more into hip flexion dynamically or statically. So what we'll do is we could just create a little bit more of an anterior pelvic tilt, okay? So a little bit of that arch in the spine to create more length in these adductors. So we're in position. Now from here, I'm going to anteriorly tilt my pelvis and shift my hips back, okay, without losing height. Okay, so if I'm working at more deeper levels of hip flexion, this really challenges the adductors. So perhaps I'll show you from a different angle. So now from here, anteriorly tilt the pelvis, shift the hips back. I can hold this statically, very taxing, or I can move dynamically through, keeping that anterior pelvic tilt. And yeah, that's very taxing on that adductor. So we could take a very basic position like that and make it very challenging for the specific goal that we're trying to achieve.